It's a game called Bang the Dice Game. In this game, you are people in the Old West duking it out with guns. It's based on Bang the card game. This is a version of the game built using dice. So what's going to happen is first, you're going to assign everybody a role. So based on how many people you are, there's a different breakdown of how many of each role there should be. But for the sake of this video, we're going to assume there are 5 players, which means there's going to be a sheriff, a deputy, a renegade, and 2 outlaws. So we're going to shuffle up these cards. We're going to deal one out to each player face down. Nobody's going to know who is what, except for the sheriff. So the sheriff is going to reveal their card. They announce to the world that they are the sheriff. Everyone else's identity remains hidden. Everyone else is then also going to get a character that they're playing. And there's a whole bunch of characters in the deck. Each character has a special ability. We're going to deal those out to each player. These are face up. Everyone knows what your character is, what your ability is. You'll also see at the top, you have a number. That's how many bullets you start off the game with. Bullets, for reasons not really clear, are how we track how much health somebody has. So if it says you have 8 bullets, then you're going to start out with 8 bullets. These are obviously worth 3. These are worth 1. Those are basically going to be like how many units of life you have. The sheriff is going to get 2 extra bullets, which is what this symbol on their card means. Your role is going to determine what your objective is in the game or what your goal is. If you are the sheriff, then your goal is to kill the renegade and the outlaws. If you're the deputy, your goal is to keep the sheriff alive. So if the renegade and the outlaws die and the sheriff is still alive, then the sheriff wins and the deputy wins. Which means even if the deputy dies, as long as that first part is true, the sheriff's alive and the bad guys are all dead, the deputy still wins because they're on the side that won. They kept their sheriff alive. If you're an outlaw, your goal is to kill the sheriff. At any point the sheriff dies, the outlaws win. If you're a renegade, your goal is to be the last person left standing. You want to kill the outlaws, you want to kill the sheriff. I guess you don't have to kill the deputy, but you want to kill the outlaws, you want to kill the sheriff. So basically you have to kill both sides. However, if you're the renegade, the order is also going to matter. Because if you kill the sheriff, then the sheriff is dead and the outlaws win. So you have to kill the outlaws, and then you have to kill the sheriff. And only by doing it in that order can the renegade become the winner. As the game goes along, the sheriff is going to be trying to figure out who's on their side and who's not. Theoretically, the deputy is going to be doing things to help them, and the outlaw is going to be doing things to hurt them. But it's also possible the outlaw might try and help them to create the impression that they are on the sheriff's side and that they're a deputy. Like I said, the renegade is also trying to kill the outlaws first. So the renegade, so for the first part of the game, the renegade is also going to play basically the same as the deputy would play. And so it's going to be trying to kind of confuse and figure out who's on your side and who's not. What's going to happen is each player on their turn is going to roll these 5 dice. Sort of like Yahtzee, or if you've ever played King of Tokyo like that. You get to take dice, you get to re-roll however many you want, and then you get to take the dice and you get to re-roll them one final time. Whatever the dice end up being that final time, that is essentially the set of dice that you are submitting, and you're going to do different things based on what those dice are. If the die is a beer, that means is you get to restore 1 health to any one player in the game, and of course you can choose yourself. So if I'm the sheriff, I start off with a maximum of 10 bullets. I've lost 2. I could give 1 to myself. If you're already at your limits, then you can't give yourself, then you can't go above whatever your limit is. Whatever your starting number is, or in the case of the sheriff, your starting number plus 2. You could, if you wanted to, you could give the beer to some players already at their maximum amount of health. They just won't get any additional health because they're already topped off. Another die roll you can get is a 1. If you roll a 1, you deal 1 damage to the person either immediately on your left or immediately on your right. And at some point in the game, if the person immediately on your right dies, then the person to their right becomes the player immediately on your right. A 2 deals 1 damage to the players either 2 spaces to your right or 2 spaces to the left. I will say if you get down to a point where there's either only 2 or 3 players left, then you just treat a 2 as though it's a 1. So you can damage anybody and you don't have to shoot yourself or whatever the math would work out. The other thing that can happen is you can get Gatling Guns. If you get 3 Gatling Guns that are face up, then 2 things happen. Number 1, you remove any arrows that are in front of you. I'll get to that in a second. Number 2, you deal 1 damage to every other player in the game. So everyone loses a life point except for yourself, and you discard all of your arrows. Arrows. When you roll an arrow, those are going to work a little bit differently. Anytime you roll an arrow, even if it's not your third roll, each time you roll an arrow, you're going to take an arrow from the pile that's in the middle, and you're going to put it in front of your guy. As the game goes along, you're going to have more and more arrows in front of you. Different players are going to have more arrows in front of them. The last time an arrow gets rolled, you're going to pull that final arrow, and now everyone's going to take damage equal to however many arrows are in front of them. So if you have 2 arrows in front of you, that would mean you take 2 damage. The other thing that could happen is you could get a stick of dynamite. If you roll a stick of dynamite, you basically don't get to re-roll that die when you're re-rolling dice. So as the rolls go along, it's possible you'll have more and more sticks of dynamite in front of you. If at any point you have 3 sticks of dynamite in front of you, you're done re-rolling, even if that was not your third re-roll. You get whatever the other 2 dice say. In this case, nothing, but let's say this was the case. You get whatever the other 2 dice say. But then because you have these 3 sticks of dynamite, not only do you stop rolling, but also, I guess there's an explosion, you lose 1 life point. Whenever you've done with your dice, you're going to go to the left. The next player is going to go. You're going to keep on going. Like I said, if at any point you get down to 0 bullets, you're out of the game. And then whether or not you win or lose is going to be based on those rolls that you started the game with. That's how you played it. That's how you play Bang the Dice game. Enjoy.